Welcome, everyone, again to another great episode of the Missions Blab. We're excited to be talking about a conversation today that doesn't get a lot of face time. It seems like it's a rare opportunity. You're going to stumble upon a blog or article online about missions and singlehood, although it is a very powerful and necessary element to talk about, as many young people are experiencing life overseas, cross-culturally perhaps, on the field, and struggling with either loneliness or singleness or whatever it is. And yet there's I think the whole premise behind this, a call to thrive, not only survive in your singleness. So let me introduce myself. My name is David Joannis. I'm the founder and president of Within Reach Global. Within Reach Global is a nonprofit organization that has been targeting unreached people groups in the 1040 window for the last nearly 20 years. You can check that out at withinreachglobal.org. By the way, you could chat at any time on the sidebar, call in and make this an engaging conversation. I also blog, by the way, at davidjoannis.com, where you're going to find tons of different missions-related articles, information, videos, etc. And really excited to be talking today. My co-host today, Steve Shermer, signed in with Craig's handle, so you don't quite see him, but this is in fact Mr. Steve Shermer. Why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Well, you already did.
Oh, did I?
Yeah, so I'm the president of Silk Road Catalyst, and I think that's about it.
Really? No, everyone, for those of you who are watching, there's a lot more to be said about this mysterious gentleman here.
Yeah, I like to stay mysterious.
Yeah.
Okay, leave it at that then. And check out silkroadcatalyst.com to learn more.
So we're actually here with two other ladies who were single. And can I say where you're at? I just want to make sure. I don't know much about the country yet, except it's in Africa. So they served in Tanzania. So I'm going to let them introduce themselves real quick, and then of course Craig will introduce himself since he's in the room as well.
Okay.
Great.
And we just start out, yeah.
My name is Ella Banky, and I served as African Inland Mission in Tanzania.
My name is Amanda Brennan, and we were teammates on a team with African Inland Mission in Tanzania.
Okay.
Great. I was expecting in your oops, can you hear me? I was expecting in your introduction something like, I like long walks along the beach. My favorite flowers, roses. That's less of what this conversation is about, isn't it today, ladies? I mean, there is an element of the call of God that people, regardless of marital status, have a powerful part to play. And so when you originally see this, excuse me, topic, singlehood and missions, I don't want it to bring a negative connotation. I want it to bring that powerful, thriving connotation of how to use this amazing time in your life to do something pivotal and powerful for God. Am I right about that?
Yeah, absolutely. We have, I think, as single women, we're given a kind of unique position versus perhaps married women and moms who are in the field of time that they just don't have. And so we were given just so many more opportunities to engage with people in our community who the moms on our team otherwise didn't have, because they were doing their first job, which is caring for their families. So it was a privilege to be able to have that time to be able to spend with people.
So are you ladies still living overseas in, did we mention the name, Tanzania?
Tanzania.
Okay. Are you still serving there, just back in the States for a while, or you're living in America right now?
We just finished up our 3-year term, so we're on home assignment, and we've been released. We've graduated from the program and are now free to either stay with AIM and go somewhere in Africa, or to move on to something else.
Okay, great. Just to kind of for me to understand as well. Excellent. I like the point that you make there. There is another dynamic of being single. You have a lot of your own time. You can make your own decisions of who to reach out to, who to connect with. How has that benefited you, ladies, would you say, in your particular field?
Yeah, I would say a big part of what our team was focusing on was not just kind of this hit and run evangelism, but in really investing in people.
Yeah.
And a big part of that discipleship is spending time and allowing people and coming alongside of people. And that time investment is just, like Emily said, it's just not something that somebody with a family who's caring for a family can necessarily commit to. So it involves some crazy like late nights, and for us in a rural setting, it involved like going out to farms and sleeping in kind of stilt watch huts, watching
Wow.
the wild pig. So it's really adventurous, and you can do a lot of things. It gives you a lot of freedoms that would just be different with motherhood. Yeah.
So taking this powerful opportunity at the moment, that's great. We're going to get back to because I want to hear more thoughts of your experience overseas as a single woman. But we have a couple other people in the room here. It looks like Craig, you're the only one left, and Rachel hasn't joined us quite yet, right?
That's right. Yes. I am Craig Ostros. I work in the Center for Global Engagement here at Liberty University. Been involved in short-term team efforts, and now I'm more involved in grant and scholarship programs. But I still get a chance to travel to Haiti every once in a while with my wife. My wife's a nurse and an educator and a lactation consultant, and we take Liberty nursing students to Haiti for a clinical field experience. So far, it's at least twice a year. Perhaps it'll be more in the future. So.
Excellent. Well, in a moment here, I want to invite a friend of mine on here. Like I said, we haven't actually met face to face, but I ran across this recent article. It was entitled, let's see, what was it entitled? Oh, Dear Single Missionary. Leslie, are you there at the moment? If so, I'd love to invite you to call in, and then we're going to get into some other questions as well. Okay. Whoops. Why don't you try calling in there one more time? And the reason is I wanted to kind of pick her brain. This is the article that she wrote here. You guys can check that out if you replay. By the way, I see two people are signed in. I'm sorry, watching live but are not yet signed in. If you're watching from the browser, I would encourage you to refresh your browser and click on right here where we're talking. We're live. That way you'd be able to engage with both Leslie, who's signed in as Adam. Don't be confused. With Craig, with Steve, who's signed as Craig, so it's a little bit funny right now. But you'll be able to call in, ask questions. And Leslie, nice to meet you.
Hi, good to see you.
I just recently ran across Leslie's blog online called Dear Single Missionary, right in alignment with what we're talking about today. And why don't you go ahead, Leslie, introduce yourself and why this article? What was your inspiration behind it?
Well, I was 26 years old when I first went overseas, and I went to China for 5 years. And I was single the entire time I was there until the 5th year, and I came home and happened to meet my husband, who was not a missionary, living in America. And so all of my overseas experience is as a single woman. And I've been back in the States for 5 years, but still, have a heart for missions and love to write about cross-cultural work and things like that.
So when you write this article, okay, so when you wrote the article, you were already here in the States, kind of reminiscing, looking back at your time.
Right.
The emotions behind it. Why did you write it to perhaps yourself or to the general single missionary? What were you hoping to say to them in a really deeper way?
What prompted it was actually there's a great resource for women serving overseas called Velvet Ashes. And
I've seen that.
Yeah,
I really like that website.
And it's fairly new within the last year or two. So they were doing one of their themes that week was singleness. And so this was actually last year. And I just felt like I had learned so many things about being single while I was overseas that I would love to put into words. So the original one was actually called Because You Are Single. And it's a letter to my younger self. So it was just kind of,
okay.
It was not really necessarily even for people who are out there right now, just kind of what I actually would tell myself if I was going to and being like, okay, listen, you're 26, you're scared of being lonely, you know, scared of, you know, maybe not even meeting somebody, like if you want to get married, because I mean, where I moved, I was in the middle of nowhere, China. So I had one teammate who was female, and there was no men, or I mean, other than Chinese men, but we weren't allowed to date Chinese men. So, yeah, so it was just kind of going back, telling myself, like, you don't need to worry. These are the things God's going to teach you while you're there.
Yeah. Yeah. I resonate with that. I was a single man in China for 7 years. That whole time I was pursuing my very pakipot wife. That means reserved and shy in Tagalog. And chased her for 7 years before finally wearing her out. She finally said yes. And now we've been married 12 years. But Craig, you had some other questions on here, or Steve, or I just kind of want to have this open conversation. The whole purpose is, I pray to inspire people who are young men or women overseas, single, like what Leslie was saying. Am I going to be single for the rest of my life? That thought process does kind of enter at certain points. And you think, does that equate to, well, let's just give up the call of God and search for a spouse? Or can you thrive? Can you actually thrive as a single person on the mission field?
Yeah. Well, I guess the starting point for me was, okay, does the Bible have anything to say about this topic? And I guess there is kind of that, I mean, the one that comes to mind is Paul's advice, right, for Corinthians, as far as, I wish everybody could be like I am, where he's saying, everybody's got their gift, and it's not like you're going to be sinning if you get married. However, I want you to be free from worry, from concern, from, like you were saying before, just that there's probably a lot of freedom that comes from just knowing that I'm only responsible for me and the connections that I have, and my ability personally to build in relationships and to live in sleep in crazy places and whatever, and not worry about how it's going to affect my family. So I think maybe there's other places that would be useful in Scripture to consult. But I'm thinking of the 1 Corinthians 7 passage where Paul is saying, I want you to be free from concern, but you're not going to be doing badly. It's just that there's plenty for you to do in the kingdom when you're solely focused on it.
Or then there's the other category who are of the burning ones and need to get married now, right? Leslie, chime in with your thoughts. Ladies, it's a little tough with the camera, so I can't read a body language sometimes. If someone has something to share, please feel free to just pop in, because I would love to hear your thoughts. And do you have something to share on that topic?
One of the things that, especially at the end of my term, I was thinking about was this question of, is Jesus better than that? Is Jesus better than a career? Is Jesus better than a good marriage? Is Jesus better than security? And kind of questions I was wrestling with, knowing that the answer was yes, he is better, but did I actually believe that? And it got to the point where I realized that Jesus has to be better in order to do the job that I was doing. I have to believe that too, or I become kind of useless in my position. And kind of relying on what Jesus says in John 15, that we have to abide in him in order to remain in him, and in order to bear fruit that will last. And so realizing that I've also been given the privilege of, like we said, time, but time also to spend with the Lord that we wouldn't have had otherwise. And being able to kind of lavish time on the Lord in a way that I never would have been able to do if I had been juggling a bunch of kids and a bunch of jobs and responsibilities at home. I wanted to say that, I can set aside 2 hours to do the Lord every day. And just and looking at the other side of it and going, would I want to give that up? And realizing no, I really do want that more than anything else. And realizing that God has kind of carried me through that journey of he wasn't good enough, but now he is good enough, and he really is better. That's awesome.
Yeah, and it is a pivotal time in your life. My wife and I I was single for 7 years, and then she moved to China when we got married. We were married for 9 years in China, and that whole time we didn't have children. Actually, doctors in Philippines, China, Thailand, and America said we'd never have a child. Now we have a miracle baby. But that whole time we were standing side by side, and we loved it, and it was powerful. And then our daughter came, and then life changed with a 3-year-old. Surprise, surprise. And we look at each other sometimes right now. We're still living overseas, cross-culturally, thinking how sweet those times were, either as a single or no children. Much more time on our hands. So it really is a powerful time to be able to say, yes, God, my intimacy, my identity is found in you, not in another man or woman. And this is solely devoted to you this time. Leslie, your thoughts on that? As a mother?
Yeah, See, now that I'm on this side of it, I have a 1-year-old and a 3-year-old.
Okay.
So I'm married.
Everyone give her props for that.
Yeah, I got back from China and got engaged 3 days later, and then married within 5 months. And then did a year and a half later. It's been a lot of transition in a short amount of time.
Yes.
So now that I think back to those times when I was single in China, and I had 2 hours in the morning to spend with the Lord and journal and and do ministry. And I mean, really, it was a gift of time. I could just go and wander around the markets and chat with people and practice my Chinese. And I mean, it was and I saw the married women. I don't think this is true of all married women, but a lot of them, if they just came over and they had kids, they were super isolated, because often their husbands were the ones doing stuff like teaching English or doing whatever work they were doing. And the women were homeschooling and didn't have as much time to learn the language. And I just felt like they seemed, not all of them, but some of them seemed really isolated and lonely, in ways that I wasn't, because I had those relationships.
Sure.
But one thing I think of when I think about that time, and now as a married woman, is that was my time of feeding the reservoir. That's when I was pouring, my whole life into Jesus, and he was pouring his whole life, into me. And I was really growing my relationship with him. And now, honestly, my kids wake up at 5:30. They nap, but I mean, it's not it's quality time in the Word with the Lord when I'm exhausted. So I'm really just drawing from that reservoir of that time when I was single,
And when we were just talking a moment ago, Leslie and I, before we went live here, she had said that was actually an exceptional time, or a time of thriving. And that's what I think, really, a time before you're married, before you find a spouse, this time could be a time of thriving. I know there's single women, single men out there who are resonating with Lottie Moon's statement, I pray that no missionary would ever be as lonely as I. And yet there is those times, there are those times of loneliness. However, man, this is a powerful time for you to be able to walk through the rice fields, meeting the women carrying big baskets of wood on their backs in Southwest China, and speaking to the people, to the locals, making relationships. So I love your thoughts on there. Yeah, it's funny. Steve says, "Nice point, Adam Werner." Steve, Craig, do you guys have any other thoughts? And ladies, feel free to chime in on these as well. I want this to be an encouraging time to young people who are in this position right now.
Yeah. The only thing I have to contribute to this discussion is from the other side. When I was in seminary, my cultural anthropology professor said, when people would ask him, hey, could I have a family on the mission field? He said, absolutely, yes. And in fact, if you are going to the field and you don't have kids, then buy some and take them with you. And because of possibilities. I think some people would seem to. I mean, there's two ways to look at it. Where suddenly children become like a burden, an obligation, a distraction, and all that. There is another way to look at it, and that is children become an avenue for other opportunities for ministry. Whether you're reaching other moms in the park, where their kids are playing, and now you can build through your kids those connections and relationships. Not to say that single people can't do that, but all of a sudden now kids become a means, for that. But that's really the only contribution I have, just because when we went to the field, I was married, we had a 4-month-old, and we went to Haiti for the first time in 1990. And so that's kind of the context that I know. I'm just real eager to learn another side here of those who have gone. I mean, we worked alongside other, singles who were on our team with us. It was very much a diverse team in that respect. We had some families, some older couples, some younger ones, some single missionaries, and so it wasn't mixed in that way. But that's probably what prompted the question that I had: in what context would a single person be more effective than a married couple, and when is the opposite true? From experience, kind of picturing contexts and team mates and the things like that. Where were those times when it was? I think we've kind of heard it earlier, but I'd be interested in hearing more of when it would just seem like that was what we needed on the field for that particular style of ministry. What do y'all think about that?
Well, I think when you go to the immigration office in Chiang Mai, Thailand, and you need to renew your visa, it is much better to go with a cute 2-year-old than alone. I agree with what you're saying. I agree with what you're saying, Craig, because there is a family draw. What Justin Long is saying as well. It depends on what you're modeling. Singles modeling singlehood, couples modeling marriage, parents modeling parenthood. We each have a role to play in the demographic we are in. But you're right. There is a draw. We have people who can't help but stop, pinch our daughter's cheeks as we're walking through the mall, or, customs officials like, oh yeah, here's your papers, boom, 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 because our daughter is saying "Howdy ka" to them. So there is most certainly that aspect. By the way, I wanted to, hey, Justin, you're typing a lot here. You want to just call in real quick? I would love to hear your thoughts on this as well. Justin Long, you guys, by the way, if you don't know him, I would really encourage you to follow him, justinlong.org. I've given him a little shout out for there. I know. I knew it'd be easy. It doesn't take much to draw you in here. But you want to expound on what you were saying there?
Well, in that particular instance, I was just listening to what was being said in terms of different aspects of your life give you different things to model. I mean, part of me cringes at the idea of saying that kids are a means to anything, but I understand exactly what you're saying about that, and it's just a chance to show how we model the life of a disciple in different stages. If you didn't have any singles on the field, how would believers? How would the new people who are just seeing the gospel for the first time ever see a mature? That's a terrible way of putting it, but I guess what I'm just trying to say is that you can model certain kinds of life for people who maybe have not seen that modeled before, and the aspects of those are singlehood, couples, parenthood. Yeah, that's all I was. All I was thinking at the time.
No,
another aspect of this too. The question that's up here is one I don't know that I can speak very well to, which is in what context would a single person be a more effective missionary than a married couple? But another aspect that I'll just throw out there for singlehood and missions is I've been doing some studies on the ratios of married couples to singles in mission, and generally find that usually somewhere between 60 and 75% of larger agencies are married couples, and the balance, of course, are singles. And for the larger agencies, it's normally about a 3-to-1 mix of single females to single males. If you're in a smaller agency, it can be as much as a 10-to-1 mix of single females to single males. And I started digging into that a little bit about why that is, and I found two things. One is that agencies, either overtly or tacitly, long-term agencies usually encourage, yeah, David, your video's gone, usually encourage married couples over singles. I've had some agencies that actually will not accept a single male. They tell them to go get married and come back. Sometimes because they look, I know. That's the way it is. Sometimes because they have a requirement of seminary. By the time a man gets out of seminary, he's usually married. And so when he comes back to the agency, he's going to be married. Sometimes they want them to have pastoral experience. And by the time they get so you don't see a lot of single males coming. The other aspect to that is that a lot of times a single male who's looking for ministry experience will go into a church environment, a pastoral environment, which is not open to single females often. And so the single female with the calling is typically going to move into mission, where it's been told to me several times that the single male in the pastorate rarely moves more than 90 miles from his wife's house, from his wife's family's house. So it's sometimes kind of like the missionary career is an acceptable outlet for a single female who feels called to ministry but is not yet married. And having been married, oftentimes we find they return home. The biggest life changes that we find in our agency and in many of the long-term agencies, the biggest life changes we find are usually in their 20s to 30s when they get married. That's a time when people go off the field. Usually in their 40s to 50s when kids have to go to college. Usually in the 50s, 60s, that space when their parents are having health issues and they come home to take care of them. If you get somebody who gets across those bridges, it's less and less that they get across those transitional periods in time. And I think it's interesting that we sometimes almost subconsciously think that mission is an acceptable career for a female, and somehow less of an acceptable career for a male. And when the female gets married, we kind of expect her not to continue in that mission career anymore. Does this mean that we think missions is marking time for the single female?
Yeah, in a negative connotation. I see Leslie shaking her head with lots of thoughts swirling around your mind.
That's why this is video, right? And not just audio.
Yeah. Whoops. Oh, I didn't realize.
Am I doing that out loud?
Well, Justin, you're being extremely tactful about that. And that's the reality. I mean, this is the reality. So how is it then, Leslie, that you make it a time that is not just filling time? Well, since I'm single, I'll go. And then how do you thrive then? How, rather than just survive in this position? And then, ladies, I'm going to ask you to come in as well.
I feel like I was kind of in a different place because when I went, I was 26 years old. I had already been a full-time teacher for 4 years in the States, teaching middle school. So I legitimately quit a job, sold my car, moved all my possessions. Whereas a lot of people who went with my organization were right out of college.
Okay.
And so I feel like a lot of them had that mentality of this is something to do after college. And we'll see what happens.
Did other people look at you though and equate you in the same kind of category? Well,
they I mean, you know how it is when you're 22, you think a 26-year-old is old, so I think they saw me as older, and different. So, but I will say there was about 100 people that I went over with, not including children. And most of the singles have come back. Most of the couples that went have stayed. A lot have stayed.
Okay.
Especially if they started having children in China and stuff like that. So I did notice that. That was a big thing. There were definitely a lot more single females than males. But yeah, as far as that, you know, I always wondered that when I was over there, like, where are all the male missionaries, and why is it always single women that stay? And I remember this man came over with, on like a vision trip with his youth group, 5 guys from his youth group that were like going into college, and they were all
ladies were like,
excited.
hallelujah.
Yeah, no, but we were old, but to them, you know,
Okay.
but they were really excited about mission. And they were kind of like, how do you do this by yourself, you know? And they're like, you know, when I get married, I'm gonna go.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, I looked at them and I was like, you know what, it's going to be too late. I'm like, because all the single women have already gone. Like, if you want to meet women who want to be missionaries, go overseas, because that's where they are.
That's a great point.
Single
guys. Yeah, single guys. You better be paying attention here. This is serious stuff, man.
Yeah, I mean, plus you have such great chances as a guy. I mean, with the 1 to 10 ratio, shoot. I mean, if you want to meet someone who wants to do missions,
and your visions line up, right? A heart for missions, a heart for unreached, or whatever it may be.
So I think that men tend to kind of wait around and meet a girl that wants to go into missions, and then they don't. And so I think they're better off just going instead of waiting to get married. So that's just my opinion. But I do think that culturally, it's like our society puts other pressure on men than that is not on women to like have a career and be able to support a family. And I really don't think our society values missions in men the way that they do in women. I don't think it's as acceptable. And so I think men don't, I think they feel more pressure, and so they don't go. So
that may explain why we have like almost 2 to 1 or 3 to 1 in trip participation, you know, where women exceed men as far as the trips that we plan here at Liberty, you know, that we're always having a really hard time.
It's funny, huh?
Guys to
I mean, I went,
you know, like
I went to Christian college, and I remember talking to my guy friends that were like majoring in business and finance, and they had a heart for missions, or they were into the arts, but like no way were they going to major in something like that. You know, they felt this pressure, like one day I have to support a family, so I can't just go be a missionary, you know? So
being an international global worker, the get rich quick scheme doesn't quite pan out, and the pay isn't great, but the benefits are out of this world, right? But you know, meanwhile, you have all these quality women who are amazing women of God, and we're not talking about the gender wars here. Okay, we're talking bringing it back to the reality of singlehood and missions, but most often I think it revolves around single women than men. And Steve was saying not just missionaries. You have something to share?
I don't have any readily available statistics for that. I would suspect well, no, can't even say that, because college is probably closer to a 1-to-1 ratio, but I suspect businesses are going to deploy. I don't know. No, I don't. And I can see so many different reasons why it could go either way that I hesitate to make any estimate as to which way it would fall. In terms of we're talking about in terms of the makeup of single expats living and working abroad, men versus women, not just missionaries. That was Steve's question. I don't know. I really don't.
Yeah. By the way, if you don't follow Justin Long, justinlong.org, I would encourage you to. A lot of really great in-depth statistical research on the topic of missions, unreached, and every other aspect surrounding that. He knows he's live right now. That's why he can't make a comment, so it doesn't stay in the books forever. So
I learned the hard way.
Yeah, exactly. You're at International Church. You're a single woman or single man. You're at an international church in the country or city that you're serving in. In walks one of the singles, perhaps on a short-term trip. What goes through your mind? Ladies? I mean, are we like, finally they're here? I mean, I guess the thing is, we know that this is your passion. You're here to serve the Lord. You're here to do a certain task and not get sidetracked by the opposite sex. but still, you want to see someone who you could potentially have a long-term relationship with and the similar passion. I talk to people all the time. That happened for me when short-term teams would come in. I'd be like, okay, is there anybody available here at the International Church? Am I the only person that happened to? Come on. Yeah, okay, there we go. Did you have binoculars?
We didn't receive any.
I'm sorry?
They were in Tanzania.
Okay.
They were in Tanzania, so teams don't make it over there, I guess, very much, right?
We were also in context of it would have been strange to receive a short-term team. So
okay.
I guess I sort of. I mean, when we would go to conferences or whatever, people are always making content, like jokes and comments about the fact that we want to be married, and I guess. If we were wanting to be married to that, I don't think our first choice would have been to move away from all the
Very good point. By the way, can you put the microphone a little closer to you? I'm struggling to hear a little bit there.
Yeah.
Sorry. Sure. I mean, I would love to be married at some point, but I think too soon that's my whole purpose. And yeah, I'm a bad strategist, and that's move. Gonna do that.
So on that topic, then, when you hear the words together, singlehood and missions, first thought that comes to your mind: negative, positive, good, bad. What does it sound like to you?
I think a mixture of both. You see so many things written down about the positives and the negatives. A big topic is where are all the men, and so that's Singlehood and missions. That's always one of the topics that comes up, and I think it's a mixture. The organization that we're with has a large amount of single women, which is actually a blessing for us because at conferences we can connect with single women and have built-in friends, which is great. But yeah, I wouldn't say there's an overwhelming positive or negative. It's sort of just reality for me. So.
Yeah, maybe a little bit more helpful to look at it like that. This is the place in my life, and I'm going to grab hold of it right now and do with it what God's heart is drawing me to do in obedience, right?
Yeah, I would just add that I think it's misunderstood.
I'm sorry, I'll cut you off there. I apologize for cutting off. Can you just put that microphone a little closer to you? Because there's a kind of a funny echo going on in the room there, and I'm
not sure what's happening.
Yeah, it's just a little bit of a funny feedback, I think. Oh, you know what? I'll tell you why. That one's not plugged in. It was probably plugged into Steve's, and he's gone, right?
No, it's plugged into mine.
Okay. Well, it's not on when you tap that. There's no power button. It should automatically be on there.
On his computer because it's very loud when he talks. And it's very hollow when the girls talk. And I think the microphone it's using is actually the one on his laptop.
Yes, I think so. If you're on a Mac, system preferences, sound, output, and then input, select ATR, USB.
Yeah, that's what you need to do.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm sorry, ladies. I want to hear your point, but I just find it a little bit difficult to understand.
All right, try that. No.
Well, while you're doing that, sorry. Go ahead one more time. I hear you, but it's definitely across the room.
It's also picking up from the big screen.
I see. That's where a little bit of the resonance comes from. While you're doing that, hold your thought there. I just wanted to point out that we have a couple upcoming blabs here. A candid conversation about everyday life of a missionary. It is just all butterflies and rainbows and unicorns, isn't it? Wouldn't you guys agree with that?
Absolutely. Anybody that way forward, they're not very good Christians. That's all there is to it.
There you have it. That one's on the record. We're going to be looking at what does an everyday life of missionary actually look like. It's not always easy. And so I would encourage people to sign up or subscribe to that. Also, we're just doing a candid conversation about all things. It'll be a general topic. And Mike Falkenstein will be co-hosting that with me as well as Craig. Anyway, wanted to point that out. And I'm sorry to cut off your thought. Why don't you continue and maybe just lean into the computer if you Yeah, sorry about that. That microphone's just not turned on.
Can you hear me now?
That's better. Yeah,
Okay.
kind of.
Yeah, I think actually talk that way this time.
Okay, I'll talk this way.
That's worse.
I just was adding.
Yeah.
Is it? Oh man.
I was just adding to Emily's comment. Can you turn
Yeah,
the camera?
yeah, to see the empty chair there.
We're doing all kinds of gyrations. Yeah.
That when I first think of singleness and missions, I think that it's misunderstood by a lot of people as temporary. I think that there are a lot of fantastic, just all of life single missionaries that make the best use of the free time that they're allowed and the flexibility that they're allowed to just move freely around the country. So in my mind, like Emily said, it's not, I'm just filling in this time until I meet someone and settle down. This is my career. This is what I'm doing. And if the Lord chooses to derail me and send me down a different path, then I'll accept that gladly. But until then, this is my life and this is what I'm doing.
Yes.
So that would just be my comment.
Thank you. Powerful words. That's what I wanted to hear. And I just couldn't quite catch what you were saying a while ago. Excellent point. So what about the rest of you guys? Oh, somebody new popped in there.
Let me introduce
single man in the house.
For you. Talk about who you are.
Hey, my name is Bence. I'm from Hungary, and I work with OM, Operation Mobilization. And I used to be single, so I was suggested to come back up here. Like now, I was just thrown into here, like singles in mission kind of stuff. And so I got married 3 years ago, and I started as a single in mission. So I don't know what's the conversation going on right now. But I'm just gonna listen.
Okay, good. Sounds good.
Sure, rather gave him away as no Emma right there.
What's that? Say that one more time.
Kurt rather gave him away as an OMer right there. I've never seen
The
George
jacket.
Verwer hanging around with his big jacket and the ball and everything. Anyway.
Nice George Verwer shout out there. One of my favorite guys to quote.
Yeah.
Besides Justin Long, of course. I know we're kind of winding down and we're not going to just perpetuate this conversation forever, but I did want to ask, do you guys have any additional thoughts about this? Leslie, Craig, Justin, others?
Well, one thing that hasn't been discussed, or maybe it was before I got in, but one of the issues that singles will face in mission is that, unfortunately, occasionally, you kind of have to watch the interaction between you don't have to really watch it, but there are a lot of people who are cautious about the interaction between singles and couples in mission. I've been around instances anecdotally where some agencies actually have kind of thought of singles as being a little dangerous. I know.
How so?
But it has. I've had single female missionaries who have told me that they have not been accepted in churches and they have not been accepted in a friendly fashion in churches or accepted in teams because this was a single female, because it was just they were single and they were older, and so it was like, why are you still single? What do we need to be careful of our I don't know. It in some instances there can be a certain I'm going to be careful of my husband around you kind of thing. And it's unfortunate, but it does sometimes happen, and that's one of the things that agencies have to deal with is how are they going to use singles? How do they mix singles and couples on teams? When you have a single that's on a team with a couple of couples, do they automatically become the default babysitter so that the couples can go out for a night by themselves? What are your expectations of a single? Those kinds of things.
These are, I think, realities that you're talking about, and people will experience them in a negative or positive aspect. Leslie, you have a thought about that? I mean,
I
I hear what Justin's saying, because I was there for last 17 years in China. So I've seen lots of people come through, and I have seen that as well. Well, she's single or he's single. So could you just watch the kids? And so there's a kind of a lesser view of a single, perhaps. This is not the reality of how God sees it, but is this how agencies or families view?
Honestly, for me, I felt more comfortable in China as a single woman than I did in America as a single woman. I mean, I felt like a lot of my friends were already married, having kids, whereas in China, you're already, when you're in another country, you're already weird, like from the standpoint of that culture. So nobody was looking at me expecting me to be married. They're just like, oh, that's just maybe what Americans do. They just maybe don't get married. So I felt like more accepted by the culture. As far as in teams, I think because I was only there 5 years. So had I been there 20 years, I might have gotten sick of, babysitting people's kids or, or families coming in and out, so I feel like I was still young enough to be like, yeah, I would love to babysit your kids, and I would offer. So, and as far as relationships with couples, I never experienced that weirdness or anything.
I rarely experienced that as well. I do like all different kinds of demographics. For example, and within Reach Global, we just recently had a couple in their 50s sell everything they have, move over to China. They brought to our team an aspect that we had been missing for years, that of the motherly, fatherly figure, not just another peer relationship within our ministry team, but a motherly, fatherly. It's the growing, more evolved family aspect. The single brother, the crazy uncle, the mom and pop. Hopefully not too many crazy uncles. But I really like the joining of those different demographics and callings together. It's a really powerful aspect, I think. By the way, welcome, World Indigenous. Good to see you here.
What I was talking about mostly happens, I think, primarily when you get into a group where they just kind of expect a mark of spiritual maturity is that you get married.
Right.
And if you haven't gotten married, then obviously there's an issue there. There's something wrong there, especially if you're older. I mean, they kind of expect it, like YWAM or young college age or kind of thing like that. But if you've been a missionary for 20, 30, 40 years and you've never married, then sometimes that can be looked at in a kind of what's up with them. It's unfortunate, but I think it does happen sometimes, and that's kind of what I was thinking of. There's also the issue in terms of singlehood. There's also going to be the issue of people who have been widowed. In some agencies, there's going to be the issue of people who have been divorced and are now moving onto the field. In our agency, we don't necessarily say no to a divorcee, but certainly not in the first year or two after that. So there's kind of those newly single issues. And another interesting thing is always going to be, like when I travel. I'm by myself. I'm married. I have 4 kids. They stay here, and mostly when I travel, I'm traveling abroad, and I kind of have to play by a different set of rules of singlehood in that case. I can do a lot of things that I couldn't do if I were traveling with kids. But on the other hand, I'm not going to be running with 18 to 20. That's not just going to happen. It's not. So
let's go blow up fireworks for Chinese New Year, right?
Yeah.
Speaking of which, happy Chinese New Year to all of you. Happy Year of the Monkey.
Gong xi fa cai.
Gong xi fa cai. Hong bao na lai. Pass me the red envelope. No, just kidding.
Yeah.
There's a. Sorry, go ahead, Craig.
I was just going to say the team that you guys served on in Tanzania, most of you were single, or all of you were single. What was the context?
No, we had a couple in their 50s who had adult children living in the States, and they were our team leaders. And then we had an American family with young kids, a Tanzanian family with young kids, and 4 single women. So
wow,
good mix.
Real diverse. Yeah.
I would say a healthy diversity.
Okay.
Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah.
Sure. So you were able to bring the best of all of those different seasons of life together, and
I think so.
without the prejudices maybe that Justin was talking about.
Absolutely, yeah. And we were careful because we were in a Muslim context to make sure that we weren't, I didn't go over to the family's houses and stay. If I noticed that the husband was home, I would just stay. I would just leave, and I'll come back when your wife's home. And we wouldn't cause any trouble for him. And but at the same, and he wouldn't come to if we need something fixed on our house. He made sure that we were both home when he came to fix it or whatever. And so, we had a really good relationship. I felt like between the different kind of subsets of our team.
Yeah.
Good.
I like that. Again, the whole topic, singlehood and missions. There are many aspects that are hugely powerful. There's very powerful aspects to be open, to have this no time restraints, that you could actually share your life with those that you're trying to reach. And yet the health of blending into a whole group of different people, whether married or families, singles. And I think is a healthy, like what Justin was saying a while ago, depends on what you're modeling. You get to model within that whole subgroup, the family life, the married couple life, the single life, and say, this is not just something we want to bring cultural imperialism to you. No, we're showing you what the body of Christ looks like. And it's a healthy way to bring the gospel. Guys, I know we got to close off here soon. I just wanted to ask if anyone has any last thoughts. And Leslie, you have any last thoughts you wanted to share? Or sorry to put you on the spot, if not.
No, it's okay. Yeah, I could share a couple things. I think just one is, as far as like organizations that would rather send couples, I feel like it's easier for singles to go. I mean, when I first went, I would look at those families and I'm like, they had to pull their kids out of school, sell their house, sell their car, leave all their grandparents. There's just a lot more that you're like plugged into as a family. Whereas a single person, like I said, I mean, I quit my job and sold my car, but I didn't have a house. My decision wasn't affecting anyone really other than like me and my immediate family. It wasn't like my husband and my 4 children or what I don't know, but you know what I mean? So yeah, they might not stay as long, but you never know. I mean, singles, they might, stay forever.
A career.
Yeah.
A career global worker, right?
Yeah. So I don't know. I feel like you don't know what God's going to do in somebody's life. So I feel like if I was someone choosing, I would just say, if you feel like God's calling you to go, then go. And, if you're walking with God and you want to be married, then just keep giving that to him. And I mean, he can do impossible things. I don't know. I feel like that's not a reason to not go. So, but the second thing, I feel like one thing I've really never heard anybody talk about is something that I went through, which is the guilt over leaving the field to get married. And so, because I did want to be there forever, I had just finished my 2nd year of language school, like totally happy, ready to be there forever. And then God brought someone in my life that wasn't necessarily called, which some people would be like, well, that's obviously you shouldn't have married that guy then. But God made it very clear in a lot of different ways that I was supposed to marry him. And so because of all of those verses, I had like fortified myself with as a single, like 1 Corinthians 7, like as a single person, like I can pour myself out wholeheartedly for the Lord, whereas someone who's married can't. I was like, well, why would I want to do that? Why would I want to get married and love God less? So I had, you know what I mean? So, I had
now Justin Long's making the squinty eye.
Yeah, so, I mean, obviously, if you're married, you don't love God less, but it is a struggle of now I do understand, I just don't have the time to sit with the Lord the way that I used to. So I can't wholeheartedly spend my time the way I want to. My heart is still there. I mean, and so, like I said, that's why he uses that time when I was single, for me to just draw from now. Remember all the things I taught you before. Those things are still true. So anyway, so that's something. Like I have a blog now, Scraping Raisins. But I'm not Adam Burner. I'm Scraping Raisins. And so I'm working through a lot of those issues through that blog of like, you know, what does it mean when God calls you away? And like, does your calling change? And, you know, did you mishear God if you feel like, oh, God called me overseas for my whole life, and now I'm like living in Colorado, married with 2 kids, but you know what I mean? So those are more questions than statements, but just to throw that out there. So marriage doesn't necessarily like wrap everything up for you if you're single.
I would continue that thought and say, if you're a young person, single, you have opportunity to go overseas and pursue the missions call that God has placed on your heart. Don't think of an excuse to say, no, God. I mean, there are people waiting at the other end of our obedience. There is a response and a call for us to go. If you're not there as a career global worker for the next, half century, that's okay. The things that Leslie, for example, learned in her 5 years in China are still impacting her life. I see it in your eyes as you get a little bit choked up talking about China. And it's powerful. It's something that compelled your life for the lostness of man in China, perhaps. And so take this opportunity while you're single, while perhaps you do have less intersecting lines connected that you could take off a year, 2 years, 5 years even, and go overseas. It's going to be a powerful time. And you have something to share?
Can I just share something real quick about this? Because I started my ministry life as a single, and then God led me to meet my wife through the ministry as I was serving Him. And just recently, what I'm learning is that being led versus being driven, And so we cannot be driven by that what we can do by singles, and that's what's driving me, that I'm a single and I can minister like that, and I should not get married. And I cannot be driven by like, okay, I'm looking for the wife or the husband, and that's my drive. I'm going to ministry because there are the best people in ministry, so I'm going to find my partner there. But be led by God,
yes.
Be led by Jesus, who is a shepherd, not a cowboy, who is driving us.
That's good.
And then I said, Lord, if you figure out where, when, how, and what, I'll go and serve you. And then I ended up here on the other side of the world in the U.S. I'm from Hungary. I'm Hungarian and married to an American, And there are certain things that I was able to do when I was a single, and God used it greatly. And there are things that I'm able to do because I'm married, and God is using it greatly. But it's still His big business, He can figure it out how He wants to do it. I'll do it single until I'm single, and then I do what I can when I'm married, and just have peace about it and be led instead of being driven.
I like
That's
that.
good. That's good.
Excellent point. I'm going to include your words in my blog that I follow up about this conversation. So maybe Craig, you could provide me your name there in the text, and I would love to quote you on that. Justin, do you have any closing thoughts, or Craig?
I would just kind of extend what they both said, in that the path is sometimes winds. It's not. We always like the direct path, and we like it to be highlighted in blue with the GPS dot. And God doesn't work that way. It winds, and it goes all the way around. And the important point is not that God's called me to China, and so obviously that is the destination, and that's where I will be for the next 50 years. The important point is that God calls us to follow Him, and we follow Him through all sorts of different stages in life. And the one thing I would just note in passing for you is that we may not have time to spend we may not have hours to spend just sitting with our Bibles, in the presence of God anymore. But He does say that as we do it to others, we do it to Him. And I think in a sense, when we are spending time with our spouses, with our children, with people at church, when we are spending time on blabs like this, in a sense, we are spending time in the presence of Jesus. and we are spending time doing something that He would have us to do. And as we do it to others, our children, our spouses, others, we are doing it to Him, and kind of keep that in mind. It helps me alleviate any guilt about about not having as much time. I got married young, and I
You don't have the reservoir.
no.
I think of my daughter now, who is 3 years old. We speak to her in English and Tagalog at home. She hears Thai from our next door neighbors and Thai grandma every day. When we go to China, she says ni hao and passes out shoes to poor kids. And she, I pray, will be able to do things that far exceed God willing, I'm ever able to accomplish. Do I look back with nostalgic emotions about those times when I was single in China? I had more time. I was able to travel freely to unreached villages, for sure. And in fact, I'm writing a book about it right now, and it's very emotional. But this is a powerful time. The path is winding. You're right, Justin. No single straight lines around here. There's a lot of intersections and intersecting spots. And but wherever you are right now, whatever God's position or placement He has for you, I would encourage you, hey, you make the most out of what you have. Take what's in your hand and use it for the kingdom. I pray even globally, cross-culturally, even I'm going to even throw out towards the unreached. That's my passion, those who have little to no access to the gospel. You guys, this has been an excellent conversation. I pray that it's a real encouraging conversation to both singles, to married couples, mothers of two, fathers who are struggling to make money, who have a heart for mission. I pray that it blesses every demographic, just to hear that, God has a place for me in the global work of bringing His message to those who don't have it in this case. So, I really,
thanks, David.
Yeah, you guys, this has been a great time. I think, Craig, do you need to head out of this room real quick?
Yeah, we do have people, usually reserving for this. Yeah.
All right.
So,
everyone, I thank you so much for coming on. Leslie, it was totally last minute for you. You're awesome.
Thank
and
you.
it's great to hear. We'll have to communicate more. And ladies, thank you so much for your input. I pray blessings over you in this next step, wherever the Lord will lead you in this next part of your journey.
Thanks, David.
All right,
see you tomorrow.
Justin. Yeah, we'll see you tomorrow. And Justin, I'll suck you back into a blog or a Blab here pretty soon. I'm sure it's going to be easy. All right, you guys, take care. Blessings. Bye-bye.